Broad Street Review podcast is an extension of Broad Street Review, Philly's home for arts, culture, and conversation, an online arts and culture journal covering the greater Philadelphia area. I'm your host, Darnell Radford. Today on the podcast, we talk to representatives of the Philadelphia Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts, or PVLA, as they celebrate 45 years of service to the arts community with their annual benefit celebration, the Arts Affair. Here is my interview with the PVLA. And welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Darnell Radford, and today I am in the virtual studio with the Philadelphia Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts. And we will learn about the organization as a whole and the upcoming event, the Arts Affair, on June 7th from 6 to 9 at Hamilton Hall at the University of the Arts. But before we get started, we will go through introductions, and I'm just going to go, left and right, because you can't see, listeners, but we're just going to start with Ken.
Yeah, good evening. Ken Metzner here. I use he, him pronouns. I am the Executive Director of Philadelphia Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts, also known as PVLA. Thanks for having us.
Great. And Shakina?
Hi everyone. My name is Shakina B. I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Coalition for Empowerment. My pronouns are she and her and goddess. And I am so excited to be here and I look forward to our conversation.
And
okay. Oh, go ahead.
I'm Sekou. Sorry. So I'm Sekou Campbell. I'm a board member of PVLA. I use he, him pronouns, and my day job, I'm a partner at Culhane Meadows, practicing in entertainment and corporate law.
Oh, wow. So welcome to the podcast. Thank you all for joining me tonight. Or whatever time the listener is listening.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sure they're washing dishes. To get started, Ken, why don't you tell us about the Philadelphia Volunteer Lawyers?
Sure. So PVLA is a nonprofit legal services organization that empowers underserved artists and arts organizations in the greater Philadelphia region. And we do that by providing access to free legal services, knowledge, and resources. Our primary service model or program is the provision of direct legal services to individual artists and small arts and culture organizations on matters that are particular to their needs. And it can run the gamut from contracts to dispute resolution to intellectual property licensing to performance agreements, the entire spectrum of legal needs that an artist or an arts and culture organization may have. And I can go on and on and on depending on how much time we have tonight, but I'll pause there.
And we will have a link to the organization in the show notes, of course. I am interested to know how you got involved in PVLA.
So, it's really interesting for me to sort of sit back and look at how the dots end up connecting, even though, typically in our journeys, we don't see them connecting until we get a little bit down the road. But I actually had an experience with Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts in New York over 30 years ago when I was first starting out as a young lawyer. And at that time, I was based in New York City. And one of the first matters that I ever handled as a young attorney was for a sculptor in New York who was referred to my firm through Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts. And since that time, 30 years ago, I have always been involved with either the New York chapter or the Philadelphia chapter, starting in 2005 when I relocated here. My journey as a lawyer took me from New York to Philadelphia. When I got to Philadelphia, I only continued practicing law full-time for about 2 years. And then I went straight into arts administration and advocacy and worked for 15 years, first running a nonprofit contemporary dance company, and then running an art house, cinema, and live music venue in Chester County. So that was a total of 15 years. And then it just so happened that PVLA was looking for a new executive director, and the timing was right, I guess, for me and for the organization. So I connected with PVLA as a staff member just about a year and a half ago in September of 2021.
Great. And so we'll move on down the line. We'll go to Shakina.
Hi.
Shakina, tell us how you got involved in PVLA.
Well, let's get started with the copyright law. Initially, I heard about PVLA some time ago. I actually utilized their services, which was a great thing for me being a vocal performer, as well as a curator, events producer, performer extraordinaire. And I had a copyright issue, and I did utilize those services several years ago, prior to your initial tenure, Ken. And Ken and I, we actually connected at the Kimmel Center doing an arts fair for the city of Philadelphia. And from there, I said, Ken, I definitely want to meet you. You have to come out to one of our events, because our organization is dedicated to educating, uniting, and empowering creatives. And we implement programs that are geared towards BIPOC creatives in the greater Philadelphia region that are low to moderate income. And due to the unemployment and underemployment, let's just call it the struggling artist narrative. Ken is taking a deep breath because I'm on the journey. We instituted programming and entrepreneurship workshops to empower the creatives to utilize their passions and creating them into transformative, monetary sustaining careers. And we do expose venues. I guess that's a part of our advocacy. And I really appreciate the work that PVLA does. And in any way that I can amplify the legal services that are available to the creatives in this area, I'm going to scream it to the rooftops. I'm actually coming out with a song, Ken. So maybe we can put that out.
I'm down for that.
Okay, the PVLA song. So I scared Ken to death on our first initial event. But from a legal perspective, it was so great for him to utilize his time to provide a contract clinic to kind of educate artists on the importance of understanding and really evaluating and negotiating contracts. And that empowerment is, imperative to our survival and thriving trajectory. I'm going to put a pin in it.
That's awesome. And I love the confidence. Please do not lose that. And Sekou, tell us how you became a board member.
So first, I just want to give Ken some praise. I recall seeing his resume on the board and thinking, is this person real? I mean, you heard some of his bio. It's the perfect mix of law and art and leading, and it's proven to be really wonderful. I mean, he gets it. He understands the significance of small arts organizations and individual artists and their value to the community and lawyers' value to them. And I just, I want to say publicly, Ken, you're doing a great job, and we love the work that you're doing. So thank you. The PVLA moved from sort of being housed in the Arts and Business Council to becoming its own separate organization and maintaining its own 501c3 independent of any other organization. And so at that time, there was a harder look at building up the board and developing more board members. And I came in. I've always been, and my story is similar to Ken's in the sense that as a very young lawyer, I also took on volunteer lawyers for the arts matters And it was so fulfilling. It was so amazing that it changed my career trajectory. I was in the litigation department at a huge firm and now work at a much smaller firm representing artists mostly and entrepreneurs because it was that powerful of an experience. And so I've always been a huge advocate for artists and for PVLA. I was honored with the Volunteer of the Year award a few years ago, and a couple years after that, I was asked to join the board. So,
oh, that's great. I guess I would ask all of you, what do you think artists need to know the most about the law behind arts and culture?
I'm going to start off, if that's okay. I think artists need to recognize the connection between entrepreneurship, legitimizing their corporate entities to manifest continual revenue. And I think that connection sometimes doesn't occur because we're not really organized in the sense of being like legitimate corporate entities. So just that knowledge base of, hey, there's a corporation bureau in the state, and acknowledging that, submitting the documents to the federal government, like you're getting your EIN, making sure you're paying yourself and paying your taxes so that you can build into Social Security, and having those systems of support to legitimize the career itself. Oftentimes it's just cash to hand transactions that often lead to, I'm old and I am not eligible for any systems of support, and then I die because I can't afford to, I haven't put away money strategically. So that's my thought, just kind of merging the gap between art and commerce.
Okay. And Sekou?
I would say, broadly speaking, the value in art is often governed by law, right? So what I mean by that is, outside of visual art, the value that you derive from art is almost purely intangible, and it's governed by, a series of laws. And so a lawyer can be very helpful both from protecting you from harms, but also in helping you sort of, as Shakina pointed out, leverage the value of your art to sort of fully realize its potential and your potential, both in terms of money, other benefits, using it in other sort of other pieces, right? Having access to other work, all those kinds of things. So I think a lawyer can be very helpful or understanding the law in general can be very helpful in understanding how you can develop relationships that help you best leverage the value in one's art.
I am going to, piggyback on all of those, but take a slightly different tack, because the way that I see the law intersecting with the arts is through the lens of sort of a social justice framework. And when I think about the law, I think about a leveling of the playing field on behalf of artists who are often marginalized and therefore taken advantage of. I think of the law as a tool for self-determination and sustainability along the lines of what Shakina was saying. I think of the law as a tool for leveraging the power of artists. I think oftentimes artists, because of the society we live in, underestimate and undervalue their own power. And by providing them with some legal literacy and some tools, I think, and in some ways serving as an interpreter and an advocate, a lawyer can really advance artists' well-being and lead us toward a more equitable arts ecosystem.
See what I was saying?
Did he give me some stats on that? Great answers, everyone. I mean,
Yeah.
Can I add another little drop?
Yes, please.
I was going to also to incorporate that ownership, right? So ownership of one's intellectual property is key and paramount, especially we're in the AI stage of life, right? We're almost at that Terminator 2 level, but we're not quite at the Terminator 2 level. But at least for the purposes of AI and digital distribution, understanding what does that mean when I allow my bodies of work that you may or may not have copywritten, but now you've uploaded to these distribution outlets. What does that look like? What does that mean? How does the royalty payout sheet versus my number of streams translate into dollars and cents? And that level of ownership, when I allow my bodies of work to be introduced to those systems, I'm allowing the world who has access to this system to now take my work, remix my work for a cost, nominally, and now it's no longer exclusively mine, right? So technically, I guess, and it's really like music is the most egregious portion of art, because when it comes to writing, it's a really restrictive understanding of law. But when it comes to like music and vocals and songwriting, it's like a different understanding. I think if more artists had these candid conversations with attorneys to kind of like, hey, what does that mean for my ownership? I really don't own anything. And then it becomes a public work after so many years, right? Thoughts?
Yeah. I love what was said earlier about I'm gonna like kind of paraphrase it. It's like it's hard to know your value if you don't have that sort of infrastructure to support your art. Because I know so many people who are like, oh, I wrote some songs, or I wrote a play, or I did something over here, and they're waiting for another entity to take it and do something with it. But it's like, it's yours. You can't just hand it over to them. You gotta make sure you maintain ownership of it. And sometimes you don't take it seriously if you don't have that infrastructure that says, this is my IP here, because it's all under this umbrella that is me. So I go out into the world. Like, I don't go out into the world. I mean, I do go out into the world as Darnell Radford, but I also go out into the world as Emery LLC. So it's very valuable. And I feel like I'm always pointing out to someone, like, here's what you need an LLC. You need it. This is so important. I'll tell you why.
So I would say, Darnell, there is certainly some truth to that. And also there are alternative and myriad ways through which, artists can get their work out into the world and protect it. And, part of what we do at PVLA and through this, amazing network of volunteer attorneys that we have is to sort of debunk some of the myths that exist out there. And I would say the primary one relates to ownership of creative output. I can't tell you, for example, how many artists come to us and say, oh, well, there's someone out there who's ripping off my song, but I guess I have no recourse because I never copyrighted it. And there is this misunderstanding that stuff that you created as an artist somehow becomes available for others to exploit when you have not granted them written permission to do so. And the only way that an artist can give up their intellectual property rights in their original works is by an express written document that clearly, conveys that. And so I think part of it, is the structural framework that you referenced, LLCs and other tools, but part of it also is a base of knowledge that we share, so that artists are becoming equipped to push back and to understand what their rights are and the many different ways in which their rights can be protected, whether it's through an LLC or a fiscal sponsor or some other mechanism that is available to them, even as a sole proprietor.
Ken, I'm wondering if you could speak to sort of the organization at the height of the pandemic and how and the needs of artists in that time. I know we're still kind of in it, sort of on the tail end, whatever you want to say. It's kind of over, or we definitely want it to be over, but like how did the organization what did the organization look like and during the pandemic, and how did art, what were the needs of artists at that time?
So I'm going to be stepping out of my comfort zone only because I was not at PVLA during the height of the pandemic. I came in the fall of 2021, but I was observing, of course, what PVLA was doing. And at that time, PVLA was collaborating with many other arts service organizations to get information out there to artists and organizations, and primarily to the gig workers, right, which are legion in the arts field, and making sure that they knew what support programs were available. So, there were special, they were called unemployment benefits, which is kind of a weird, term for them since folks really were not payroll employees, but there were certain benefits that were created for gig workers. But folks needed to know about it, and they needed to know how to take advantage of it. There were, of course, the payroll protection loans, which were then forgivable, and other sort of federally supported state programs that PVLA was very active in making sure folks were aware of and how to take advantage of them. But I also, what we did see, and certainly has continued to present, is an increase in the number of artists who went unpaid for work that they had completed during the pandemic, right? Folks either claimed that they were unable to pay the artists for the work that had been done, or I think in some cases took advantage of the pandemic as a convenient excuse to not pay artists or to not follow through on a contractual obligation that they had made with artists. So PVLA has seen many disputes that have arisen out of a relationship that disintegrated. And often that was caused by simply a failure on the hiring party to follow through on their obligations.
They straight stole. Let's call it.
There was some of that for sure.
A little trickery and slickery and thievery.
Definitely a lot of panic then.
I digress. I'm so glad you brought that up, Ken, regarding the gig worker narrative during the height of the pandemic, because there were several artists that I knew that really had issue with validating the legitimacy of their gig work or works as creatives, because a lot of these opportunities occur in an informal process, which led to a lot of people recognizing that there needed to be some institutional, structural, internal changes with how these opportunities and transactions are to take place moving forward. And sometimes the fear of that transparency and the lack of awareness regarding what that reflects for you as an individual artist. We don't think about, hey, I'm a creative, I'm on social service systems. I don't want to necessarily show that I'm getting this type of money, but I need it to survive. It's kind of like being in that middle ground. I need it, but I can't necessarily show it, or I'm afraid because for whatever, myriad of reasons it could be. However, many of those individuals were like, I don't want to actually apply, because now if I apply and this money is, federally tracked, then either I am going to have to pay this, this, and this. And let's not even get started with student loans and how that's looking with, a lot of gig workers. And they're like, I don't want to have to show that I'm, even though I'm technically income based, but based on this income that I'm receiving. So just really when we're talking about low to moderate income creatives of all disciplines, respectfully, many of them have intentionally avoided that because of the, not understanding, not demystifying the process and how it would, actually serve as a benefit to them rather than an affliction of financial deception.
Wow. Well said.
That's why I created this book, and I'm plugging it.
What is the book?
The Art Economic Empowerment Workbook, a creative's guide to entrepreneurship and successful project execution. We go over the basic steps on how to execute an LLC, so you can formalize the process with the state of Pennsylvania, and then securing creative opportunities. That's a whole other piece, but that was an inspiration as a result of what happened in the pandemic and just my experience and many of my peers not having, not understanding all the resources available like PVLA or, different institutional supports that they're eligible for to really kind of maintain and essentially thrive. I mean, just thinking about, I feel real bold and confident when I say, oh yes, my attorney. Like PVLA, yes, my attorney. And then the conversation changes. I mean, people are like, oh, you have an attorney? Yes, a tough one. And then Ken, I showed him, I said, he has glasses and he doesn't play.
And gray hair.
That means he read a lot of books. So when I say that, it's like the conversation is real different as opposed to, I'm just an individual artist. Oh, no, I'm represented. And representation is very near and dear and available to myself and every other creative in the greater Philadelphia region.
So if I may pick up on that point, I think both Ken and Shakina were sort of referencing it. But I am really interested in, and I think it's important for artists to know how to have a relationship with a lawyer. And I think what you're saying is true of how they have a relationship with everyone, right? So it's very often the case that, unlike most professions where the artist is producing this amazing piece of work and, selling it in some market, it's almost like the buyer is doing them a favor as opposed to the other way around, right? Yeah. And even other functionaries, right? Agents, lawyers often, not PVLA lawyers, but other lawyers. And so just in general, I think it's important for artists to understand, even with their lawyers, that even if they're not paying them, even if they're pro bono, they work for you, right? And so, let them know what you want and have that conversation, have a relationship as opposed to a transaction with a lawyer, right? Like they, as Shakina pointed out, they are your lawyer. They represent you. And if they're only going to represent you if they know what you want, right? And so you want to be vocal about, no, I don't want, if a lawyer suggests something that you don't want, you should express why you object to it and how you'd like to try to fix it. Doesn't mean that they always can, right? There are limitations in the law, but it's good to have I'd rather that than the client not say anything, right? In that context. So.
Yeah. And I think also, that sometimes artists, and small arts organizations, don't understand the extent to which a lawyer can serve their economic interests, right? A lawyer representing you as an artist can ask for stuff that you might be ashamed to ask for, or you might think is greedy, right? But the lawyer can ask for the sun, the moon, and the stars. And when you have a good relationship with your lawyer, of course, you can walk it back and say, oh, well, that's just my lawyer. They're just trying to get the best deal for me possible. So a lawyer in some ways can serve to foster or preserve a relationship with another party where you as an artist wouldn't want to be as assertive of your rights as you might feel entitled to, because you don't want to harm the relationship. But you see, the lawyer plays a different role as your spokesperson, as your advocate, as your counselor, and can help you in many cases to accomplish what it is that you really do want, but you're afraid to ask for, or you're concerned about your reputation or how you might be perceived. as a negotiator. So yeah, there's a lot that we lawyers can do that I think is sort of, I would put in the bucket of quasi-legal. It isn't necessarily something that is wholly based in a legal education, but it is sort of built upon this role of the lawyer as advocate. And that's where I think it can be really helpful to artists and small organizations to understand, how a lawyer can advocate for you and how a lawyer might be able to identify possibilities for you that you hadn't imagined. Different ways of doing things, different ways of arranging or structuring a deal or partnering with a collaborator or another organization in ways that you weren't aware was possible. So in some ways, I like to think of, at least the PVLA lawyers we are creative too. I think the practice of law is a creative art. It is not a science. And I think that's where I always feel inspired by artists, because I learn from our artist clients different ways of being creative and resourceful and courageous.
Okay.
That's great, and I love how you're all hitting home as the lawyer as advocate, because I can think of so many artists who feel like their voice is not strong enough.
Yeah.
Especially when they go into negotiations or when they're just things are tough for them, so they're just happy to have the opportunity and may not be thinking about all the ways that all the things they might be leaving on the table, or things that I didn't know to ask for that. Like, it was short notice and I really needed to say yes. Like, and they told me tell me in 48 hours. It was like, I don't have any time. What are we going to do? Okay, fine. And then they get into a situation and they're like, this is not what I thought at all. And I wish I had an advocate, someone I could run this by to figure out if this was going to be the right thing for me.
I think
so. I can share a story related to that I tell my clients all the time. So I recall early on in my career, I had a client who was signing a record deal, and we're going to the big offices in New York, and he's taking pictures and all that stuff. And I reminded him that those offices of all these major distributors are built on the work of people like you, right? Like, I know they're beautiful, big glass steel buildings and they're wonderful and all that, but it's your artwork that built those things, right? Yes, there are other things, and I don't mean to diminish, there's marketing and there's all kinds of other things that they contribute that are amazing and important and helpful. But at the core of it, it's the artwork, right? And so it can be confusing when you're like, all I have is this thing in my hand, right? And they've got all of this fancy stuff. And how do I compete with that? But I try to remind artists that it is that thing in your hand that built all that fancy stuff. So, or at least helped build it. So keep that in mind as you walk through the world. But everything Ken said is absolutely correct. You need a team to help you do that, to help you sort of manage your relationships with folks and advocate for you when you need, help you strategize, all those things.
Absolutely. So, 45 years of the PVLA. 45 years of being advocates for the arts and for the creative community.
Ken, I thought you were
For the listeners, Ken is profiled on our video.
One day we might release this as video. But we'll be celebrating 45 years of service with the PVLA with the Arts Affair. It's coming up in June, on June 7th. So tell us a little bit about the Arts Affair.
Yeah. So, well, thank you, Darnell. And it's interesting as you were talking and referring to how we're celebrating 45 years of service. I'm kind of chuckling to myself because there's a reason why we're calling it the Arts Affair, because we really are celebrating the amazing arts community that we have in this region. And we are centering the artists in that celebration. And it is a privilege to be a lawyer and to be able to work with and for artists. So the Arts Affair is a celebration of our arts community. And yes, it also is a recognition of the amazing contributions that our network of volunteer lawyers provides for artists and arts organizations. And we have selected a small handful of lawyers who are being honored for their extraordinary commitment over the past year. But really, too, it is an opportunity for a variety of different artists of all different mediums to sort of share their magic in an evening of celebration of great food and drink and just being able to highlight many of the incredible creators that we have in our region. So we are going to have a drag performer as our host, and we are going to have live music. We are going to have break dancing and just an amazing array of other artists as well, visual and music and poetic. And it really is an opportunity for lawyers who care about artists to come together and artists who are a part of our community or who want to be a part of the PVLA community to come together in celebration. And yes, since you do notice 45 years, I would be remiss not to mention that PVLA is one of about 14 similar organizations across the country. So I referenced earlier that New York Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts, that was the original, but there are other volunteer lawyers for the arts organizations in many cities, in Miami, in Chicago, in Atlanta, in Washington, D.C., and all up and down California. There are 5 different offices in California. So I want any of your listeners to know that even if they are outside sort of the greater Philadelphia region that we primarily service, there probably is an organization like us who would be able to help them in their own home region.
You Great. Heard that? And that's free 99.
Yes, free 99 is what we charge. And we survive based on the generosity of donors. We are supported. 99% of our budget comes from individual donors and law firms and a couple of grants here and there. But, in order for us to do what we do in support of the artists and these small organizations, we really do need the contributions of individuals. And that's what this event, too, is also intended as a fundraiser, of course, to support our programming and our ability to provide the education advocacy resources and representation that we do throughout the year.
And which is why it's extremely important for everyone to buy tickets like ASAP, because those tickets go back to the organization. And we just talked about the ecosystem and kind of recycling dollars within the community to help further the mission of PVLA. And I'm excited that I will be there. I have my friends are coming through. We're excited about all the amazing artists. I think the biggest thing for me was the food. You had me at the food. So the culinary artists, professional.
Eatable Delights out of Mount Airy. They are amazing.
Okay. Yes. I actually have them on a different event, but that's another talk. Yes. You had me at, Ken said food. I said, how much? Where we going? So there's live music. It's central to Philadelphia. Use your spot hero to get parking in Center City. I got parking for like $15 for 12 hours. And I'm excited. Definitely. And the dress code is fashionable, but not over the top.
You got it. Comfortable but chic.
Yes. So we're all going to be svelte. I'm going to make sure I wear my cute little svelte outfit and cute shoes.
Great. I'm glad you said. I'm glad you put a point on that. This is a celebration of the community, because when these events come along, and there are quite a few, probably that are being promoted right now. That it's sort of that time of year where, if you are a partier, there's a lot of events you can attend, but knowing that it's about the community you serve, and and artists are members of that community, and that's why they should be in the room celebrating with you and having great time. And that's great. And I also see that there are artist rates in here too, which is
for sure. Good. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this is going to be the arts party of the year, because I don't think you're going to find an event that has better food, open bar, live entertainment for 3 hours for $45 for artists or arts and culture workers. It's a lot more expensive for the lawyers, but as it should be, right?
As it should be. As it should be. The other thing I'd say too is, if you're not an artist, the value of both the Arts Affair and PVLA hopefully is clear. But what I would add is, what I think about a lot is the first time I had an experience watching myself or my community expressed. It was on stage, and to see yourself reflected in a piece of artwork is so incredibly powerful. I was lucky enough to have that experience at a very young age. And it just gives you a sense of yourself and a sense of your surrounding community. So anyone in Philadelphia, the folks who are performing, who we support, are all local to you, and they have a huge value to you. Probably a bigger value to you even, in terms of just speaking for your community and giving what I like to call an enlightened, I'm stealing it, but an enlightened self-portraiture. That's from Elaine Locke. But an enlightened self-portraiture, which is a beautiful experience to have, and so the support PVLA supports that.
Okay, so y'all better come and get these tickets like yesterday. Okay.
June 7th.
June 7th.
I was going to say, you already said this will be the event not to miss. I was going to ask
you. Can say it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
This event is not to miss, apparently. Okay. The Arts Affair 2023.
Right, and when the board, last year, we did our first event post-COVID at the Cherry Street Pier. At the same time of the year, it was June 7th last year, and it was just, an amazing, good time. When the board sort of, indicated to me that they wanted to do a big event in celebration of the volunteer lawyers and the artists, I just said, okay, no sit down, no rubber chicken dinners. And I'm going to get all my artist friends to help program the evening. So it is, about the artists, celebrating the artists with an incredible, variety, a buffet, if we could say that, a buffet of arts experiences for folks. So that's what we're going to get. And also, so there's Eatable Delights, who's catering, but also Top Dog Cocktails is donating their amazing cocktails for the evening in support of PVLA. So they're going to be there, and it's going to be just a great time.
Wow, that's awesome!
You guys,
Nia. Spicy chicken.
Okay.
Spicy chicken.
Okay.
Yeah, I also would say too. And sorry, Darnell. I say you're.
Go ahead.
Part of putting lawyers and artists together too is an opportunity to network, right? I think that of course, what lawyer who who doesn't see themselves as cool and progressive would not want to be in a room full of artists. But I think too that if artists are going to sort of start to break down this fear of the law and lawyers, the best way to do that is in communion, is in community, at an event like this, where you'll get to meet other lawyers and lawyers who are interested in supporting artists. So I think the networking opportunities are also really incredible. And what I love to see is when PVLA connects a lawyer to help an artist on one discrete matter, what we very often see is that the lawyer then becomes an audience member, a donor, a supporter, a cheerleader for that artist. Yes. And, that's the kind of support that, all creators need. You need a posse. And, it's good to have lawyers who have the passion and the commitment and often the resources to help you get your magic out in the world, to help you share it, to help you monetize, protect it, and get it before the people who need to see it and experience it.
Yeah. Can you truly embody that? And you really embody the mission as being a great resource. You've certainly been extremely helpful for the individuals in our organization. And I just want to say thank you, and thank you to PVLA. And we're going to party and toast it up on June 7th. And I hope everybody's
Yeah, we are.
Squad deep. Yeah. Squad deep at the party. I'm sorry. The affair. The arts affair.
The arts affair.
The arts affair.
Even though it sounds like
a little tawdry.
Yeah,
there was some thought that went into the name. We lawyers choose our words carefully.
A lot of meanings. A lot of meanings.
Absolutely. Well, I hope our listeners are excited about learning more about the PVLA and are even more excited about the Arts Affair, especially at a $45 artist rate. There is no reason why you can't be in the room where it happens, June 7th from 6 to 9 at Hamilton Hall, the University of the Arts. Ken, Shakina, Sekou, thank you so much for telling us about the PVLA and the Arts Affair. I'm so glad that BSR can be a part of all of this, and we're happy to be involved. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to say as we sign off?
Yes. Ken is like, oh, hold your breath now. I'm going to say, if for any reason, as a creative, if you live in the greater Philadelphia region and you're like, you know what, I can't afford it, that's even more of a reason to figure out a way to afford it, to meet some attorneys so that they can renegotiate some better contracts for you so that your end of year revenue are reflective of a much greater outcome. So yes, I'm trying to meet everybody in the room.
Yeah, thank you, Shakina. That comment reminded me of one more thing that I think it's important to say. For all of the lawyers and other folks who do have resources, who would like to enable artists to come to this event, we have a special sponsorship opportunity where even if you're going to be out of town, or even if you are going to be in town, but you want to make it possible for more artists to come to this event so that they can meet lawyers who can help advance their careers, you can buy and sponsor an artist ticket. $45 for one artist, $180 for four artists, and make it possible for artists who wouldn't otherwise have the resources to be there to come. So I will say we already do have a few sponsors, so there are a few openings for some artists who might not be able to come up with the $45. So we're going to do our best to get as many artists there as possible. And honestly, I would love to see more artists in the room than lawyers. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I think it is possible.
That's all right. They all can represent me.
So Ken, you said something that makes me feel guilty. I want to plug something, but it's kind of not exactly related to this topic. But it was an organization that I came to not through PVLA, but a similar kind of approach. I now co-chair the board, and we have tickets going on sale today for a film festival. Not in June, so we're fine. It's in August 2nd through the 6th, and the early bird tickets go on sale today at Black Star Film Festival. You could just Google Black Star Film Festival. It'll probably be the first hit.
Well,
here in Philly.
Well, while we're plugging, I'm just gonna add a little something, and this is after it's in June, but after the affair. Our organization is launching the first ever official Philadelphia Juneteenth Wine and Arts Festival. And that's happening. It's never been done in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania as a state. And that's happening on June 17th. That's actually free if you just want to attend. We're going to be highlighting Black-owned wineries at Cherry Street Pier on the 17th. So that's after. So don't worry about that until after.
Nice.
Okay.
Wow.
Get the tickets. Get the tickets for all of what we just did. Make sure you drop a link in every place that we just, all the events we just aforementioned.
So get your ticket to the Arts Affair. Yes. Find Shakina, find Sekou, ask him about these events, and then attend those events.
Yeah, and you know what? There's one final opportunity that I'll mention for any arts organization that wants to become a community partner for the Arts Affair event. If you'd like to do that, please contact me or Mari Kraska, and we will get you connected, because by becoming a community partner, you get a discount code for your stakeholders, and also by helping us to get the word out about the event by sharing, our collateral on your social media channels, you will have the opportunity to bring your own materials to the event, and there will be a place for you to display that for folks to learn more about all the great stuff that you're doing in the community, in the arts. So we're trying to make it a very sort of inclusive event for all of the artists that we love.
Okay.
Great.
We're gonna turn up.
Lots of lots of exciting ways to participate on the way out. Thank you so much. The Philadelphia Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts. You can go to pvla.org to find out more about the organization and get your tickets for the Arts Affair on June 7th from 6 to 9 at Hamilton Hall, the University of the Arts. There are many ticket options, so one of those will be one that will resonate more with you. And, you can also sponsor an artist. Make sure that there are more artists in the room. That's always great. I always say you should get 2 tickets because the arts is more fun with a +1. I usually say theater, but the arts in general is more fun with a +1. Ken, Shakina, Sekou, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. It was truly a pleasure.
Thank you, Darnell.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Want to get involved with Broad Street Review? Head on over to our website at www.broadstreetreview.com and click Get Involved at the top. While you're there, help keep us running and click Donate to find out how. Connect with us on social media, on Facebook and Twitter at BroadST Review. Thank you for helping to keep the conversation going.